Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
After that, whenever my wife was out for the night, I'd slip away to her place in secret. The second I turned the knob and stepped inside, she'd be there, waiting for me, and we'd lose ourselves in each other completely. One particular night, she greeted me in a sheer nightgown that clung softly to her frame. The dim glow of the room spilled over her, teasing out the faint outline of her lingerie beneath, and I couldn't resist. I pulled her into my arms and brushed my lips against the warmth of her shoulder. She leaned in close, her breath tickling my ear as she murmured, "Tonight, let yourself feel me even more." I eased her down onto the sofa, gently lifting her legs as I pressed myself into her. Her quiet moans filled the air, mingling with the rhythm of her breathing as I moved with growing urgency. Her fingers dug into my back, leaving sharp little trails, and I gripped her waist tightly, swept up in the overwhelming sensation of merging with her. In those moments, my mind churned with a messy blend of guilt and ecstasy, but one glance into her eyes washed every doubt away. Our apartment sits just across a narrow street from another building where a couple lives. The catch is, I can see straight into their home from my study window. My wife, Susan, and I are a pretty average couple in our early 30s, and we recently bought this place to kick off a fresh chapter together. The neighborhood's a quiet cluster of high-rise apartment buildings, and at night, the flicker of lights from outside always seems to draw my attention. It started innocently enough, just idle curiosity. After wrapping up work and settling at my desk, I'd look up and catch the faint shapes of that couple moving behind their flimsy curtains. Before I knew it, I was peering through the slit in my own curtains every evening, drawn to whatever they were up to. Their place is one floor below ours, and with those thin curtains they've got, the whole interior lights up like a stage when they flip on the lamps. They never seem to notice or care that someone could see in, carrying on like they were in their own private bubble. They'd often chat together, flashing easy smiles that made them look genuinely happy. Susan and I have that kind of vibe too, so it was like watching a mirror of any everyday couple, nothing special, just life as it goes. Yet, oddly enough, I never got bored of staring, no matter how long I lingered. On the good nights, I'd catch them stealing a kiss, and I'd hold my breath, totally hooked on the sight. One evening, under the warm glow of their lights, I spotted her standing near the window. She had on a lightweight housecoat, and the way the light filtered through it hinted at the shape of her underwear underneath. My breath hitched for a moment. Her long, dark hair spilled over her shoulders, framing the soft lines of her body, and I couldn't look away. Then, she slipped the housecoat off with a slow, casual grace and reached for a fresh set of lingerie from a chair nearby. She slid into a pair of delicate lace pieces, her movements smooth and unhurried, and the light played over her skin, catching every curve and detail. It was stunning, almost too beautiful to process, and I steadied my breathing, determined to soak in every second. Moments later, her husband came up behind her, wrapping her in his arms, and they sank into a deep, lingering kiss. I couldn't peel my eyes away, caught up in the scene, my chest tightened with a tangle of guilt and a strange rush. I'm not creeping, I told myself. They're the ones with the see-through curtains, acting like it doesn't matter. That's how I brushed it off, letting myself savor every glimpse. Then one day, it felt like she'd caught me in the act. She stood by her window and waved my way, a gentle, almost welcoming gesture that stopped me cold. Did she actually know I was watching? After that, my pulse raced every time I saw her, and my little peeking sessions stretched out longer each night. One Sunday afternoon, Susan and I popped into the little neighborhood market when I spotted a familiar figure. I ducked my head on instinct, but she walked right over and said, "Hey there." My stomach dropped. How did she recognize me? I stood there, heart hammering, until I realized she was talking to Susan. "Oh, Emily, what's up?" Susan replied with a casual grin, and it clicked. They were buddies from a local yoga group. When Susan introduced me, Emily turned her gaze on me, her smile warm and steady. She was tall, effortlessly chic, with long dark hair tied back neatly, radiating a quiet elegance that pulled me in completely. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a split second, I swore she was thinking, "You're the guy who watches me every night, aren't you?" "Hey, you all right? You seem kinda tense," she said gently, snapping me out of my daze. "Oh, no. I'm good," I stammered, waving it off. After we parted ways with Emily, I glanced at Susan and asked, "So, you two are friends?" "Yeah, we've been in yoga together for a while." "You know her too?" "Not exactly. Just seen her around," I said. But the real story, that I'd been fixating on her every night, was a secret I'd never spilled to Susan. "She's the kind of person who sticks in your mind," Susan said with a knowing smirk. "So gorgeous and poised." Her comments stirred a flicker of unease in me, and that night, I couldn't bring myself to sneak my usual look. But the next evening, after dinner and a shower, I told Susan I had some work to wrap up and ducked into the study. Work was just an excuse. I needed to see Emily and her husband again. I knew it wasn't right, but my feet carried me to the window all the same. Watching their familiar routine settled my nerves somehow. Then Emily stepped up to the window and seemed to stare right at me through the curtains. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I yanked the curtains shut. Did she see me? I forced myself to stop for a few days after that, but the pull to catch another glimpse of her only grew stronger. One day, Susan called to say work was keeping her late. Her tone was steady as always, but an odd jitter crept up on me for no clear reason. Then she mentioned Emily would swing by to drop something off, and my mind blanked out for a second. Tonight, the word bounced around in my head, stirring a quiet buzz of nerves. That evening, the doorbell chimed, and there was Emily, framed in my doorway with a small package in hand. She flashed a gentle smile and said, "Hey, Mike." Her voice was warm, but something in her look made me feel exposed, like she could see every thought I'd ever had. "Susan asked me to bring this by," she said, extending the package. I fumbled, caught off balance. "Oh, come on in," I said, my voice cracking slightly as I tried to keep it together. My pulse was racing as I showed her inside. She stepped in, her eyes drifting around the room before settling near the study window. Her place glowed in the distance, and I swallowed hard, stealing a quick glance at her profile. "You've got a great view here," she said under her breath. There was a hint of something in her voice that sent a shiver through me, and I scrambled for a reply. "Yeah, it's really sharp at night," I said, trying to sound offhand as I edged closer. She turned and looked right at me. "Can you see our place from here?" Her eyes seemed to dig into me, and my throat tightened. Yeah, a bit," I muttered, glancing away. She paused, then gave a small smile and said, "I kind of wanted you to see me." Her words washed over me like a warm wave, sinking deep. The real me, just as I am. Her tone softened, and I managed to croak, "Did you know I was watching?" She tilted her head just a touch and said, "Susan's told me plenty about you. She says you're a great guy, and I guess that made me wonder about you." Before she even finished, my head was swimming with her. She knew I was watching? It felt unreal, but it sparked something hot inside me. "Keep watching me, Mike," she added softly, like it was more a shared secret than a request. It sounded less like a plea and more like a quiet understanding between us, and I just stood there, staring, lost in it. As she turned to go, she said, "Oh, I'm Emily, by the way. Nice to finally meet you." Her name landed soft and sweet in my ears, and when the door clicked shut behind her, I stayed rooted there for ages. "I know you've been watching me every night." I didn't hear her say it, but the thought echoed in my mind anyway. A messy knot of confusion and excitement twisted inside me as I drifted back to the window and peered out at her place. If she really knew, every moment up to now felt brand new. From then on, I watched her without a shred of guilt. One night, I caught her tossing me a quick wave from her window, small and sneaky, so her husband wouldn't catch it, like a little secret just for us. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest, and I started timing my evenings to catch her every move. One weekend, Susan headed off to her parents' place, leaving me on my own. Late that night, Emily's husband was nowhere to be seen, and she beckoned me over with a wave that yanked me right out of my seat. I didn't even pause. I bolted out the door and made a beeline for her place. "Come on in," she said as she opened the door, and stepping into that living room I'd only ever spied from afar felt like crossing into a dream. "Where's your husband?" I asked, and she let out a light laugh. "He's out tonight, probably stepping out on me. Maybe with Susan?" She tossed it out like a tease, and I didn't bite. But as we sat there sipping drinks and chatting, the tension melted away. She scooted closer and whispered, "You like me, don't you, Mike?" I hesitated, then let it out. "Yeah, I do. That's why I kept watching." She smiled and leaned in, kissing me. Her lips were warm and tender, and I slid my arms around her shoulders, drinking in the feel of her. Through her thin clothes, I could sense her warmth, her soft breaths, the faint tremble in her touch. It wrapped around me like a blanket. I trailed kisses down her neck, breathing her in, and as she tugged my shirt off, I carefully slipped her nightgown free. The light spilled over her, revealing a body so gorgeous it stole my breath, and every brush of her skin sent a jolt through me. I guided her onto the bed, locking eyes with her as she pulled me in, whispering, "You want me, don't you, Mike?" I didn't bother with words. I climbed over her, our breaths weaving together in the quiet. Her hands roamed my back. Her breath danced across my ear, and I sank deeper into her. Susan, guilt, none of it touched me. All I had was this wild, all-consuming rush with her, and I let it take me, chasing every spark of desire. After that, I'd sneak over whenever Susan was out. She'd be waiting every time I opened the door, and we'd dive into each other without holding back. One night, she met me in that sheer nightgown again. The light traced the edges of her lingerie, and I pulled her close, kissing her shoulder. She whispered in my ear, "Feel me even deeper tonight, Mike." I eased her onto the sofa, lifting her legs as I pressed into her. Her moans filled the room, sinking with her breaths as I moved harder. Her nails scratched down my back, and I held her waist tight, lost in the overwhelming rush of being one with her. Every time, my head spun with guilt and bliss, but one look into her eyes, and all my second-guessing faded away. But here's the weird thing. Whenever her husband was gone, Susan was usually out too. I chalked it up to chance at first, but it kept happening, and Emily's offhand quips started to feel heavier. Could it be true? The idea gnawed at me, blending unease with a strange curiosity that wouldn't let go. Still, I shoved it aside and kept up my nights with Emily. One evening, she asked me out to dinner. Her voice was low and silky, hinting at something more, and neither Susan nor her husband were around that night. After dinner, she said softly, "Mike, I'd like to go to your place tonight." I nodded without a second thought, and we headed back to my apartment. We were sipping drinks and talking when Emily set her glass down and drifted to the window. "Let's take a look at my place," she said, her voice catching slightly. I grabbed my drink and joined her, but when I looked out, my heart stopped cold. Her husband was in their living room, and next to him was a woman I'd know anywhere, Susan. I couldn't catch my breath, shock rooting me to the spot. She had on a thin blouse, her hand resting on his shoulder. They gazed at each other like they'd done this 100 times, laughing softly, and then his hand slid around her waist, pulling her in for a kiss. Susan's arms looped around his neck, pressing herself closer as their lips moved together, slow and easy. The light sharpened their outlines, and I saw it all, my wife kissing another man, plain as day. My head went blank. My heart pounded so hard it buzzed in my ears, and the glass in my hand trembled faintly. Is this actually happening? The thought looped endlessly as my body stiffened, locked in place. I could almost hear Susan's laugh drifting through the glass, and it stabbed at my chest like a blade. But weirdly, anger didn't come. Instead, I felt this strange brew of emptiness, resignation, and a pull I couldn't pin down. Emily spoke beside me, her voice calm. It wasn't a joke. I knew about them. Her tone was even, but I caught the faint ache beneath it. I told him I'd be at my parents' tonight, so I knew they'd show up. I didn't say a word, just watched. Susan unbuttoned his shirt, her hands settling on his chest, while his fingers crept up her thigh. It unfolded like a slow reel. My wife, so comfortable in his arms, like a stranger wearing her face. Why? Spun through my head over and over, but no answer came. Emily leaned into my arm, her warmth anchoring me in the chaos. I turned and pulled her close, finding her lips. Her breath grazed my skin, and I kissed her fiercely, trying to drown out Susan's image. Her hands slid around me, drawing me in, and we lost ourselves in each other that night. That scene outside lingered in my eyes, but in Emily's embrace, I fought to let it slip away. A few nights later, I was back at my window, gazing over at her place. Something felt off. Sharp voices seemed to spill out from their apartment. Then Emily stepped to the window, her eyes finding mine, quivering with something raw. It was a desperate call for help. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my shoes and bolted out the door. My heart thumped wildly, blood surging as I ran, breathless but unstoppable. Her door was ajar, and I burst into the living room. Her husband whipped around, his voice cutting. "Who the hell are you?" His face was twisted with fury, and Emily stood behind him, shoulders trembling. I steadied my breath and said firmly, "I'm here to take Emily." His brows shot up, and he stepped closer, snarling. "What? What's that supposed to mean?" I held his stare and pressed on. "You've been with my wife. You don't get to stop me. I'm Susan's husband." His face locked up, eyes darting with sudden panic. "What?" he stumbled out, but I wasn't waiting for him to process it. Emily's voice broke through, faint and strained. "We were fighting about that." It was quiet, but the hurt in it pierced me. I didn't flinch. "I've always looked out for Emily," I said, brushing past his glare and reaching for her. "And now I'll be right here for her." She took my hand, her fingers cold and shaky. He yelled, "What are you doing? Get out." But his voice had no bite left. I guided Emily to the door, and she murmured, "Mike, you've always watched over my heart." My chest flared at her words. Have I really? I wondered for a fleeting second, but her hand in mine erased any uncertainty. I promised myself I'd treasure her. As we stepped outside, she squeezed my hand harder, and I didn't glance back. His shouts faded into nothing as we walked away together. A year later, we settled into a new apartment. Another couple's life flickered beyond the window, but I didn't give it a second thought. Looking back, it clicked. Those nights sneaking glances through the curtains weren't about the thrill of watching. It was always Emily, her smile, her breath, her everything, pulling me in bit by bit. Now she's here, and I wake up to her every morning. "Mike, dinner's ready," she calls from the kitchen, her voice a gentle hum in my ears. I turn to her, and she flashes me that smile. That smile pulls me back to those nights, and I realize they steered us right here, like it was meant to be. What if I'd never peeked out that window? The idea flits through my mind, but I let it go. She steps over, resting her hand on my shoulder, and I take it, smiling back. A soft tremor hums through me, but it's not guilt anymore. It's happiness, calm, and a love for her that fills me up. "Yeah, let's eat," I say, and she nods with a soft laugh. In that moment, I know she's all I need, right here beside me.